Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to another narrated Pokemon Wi-Fi battle. Today's battle is an underused match that I had against an opponent by the name of Jeezus, and this is actually the second of two battles that we've had together in the underused tier. His team is basically the same. I think Sharpedo was not on the team when I battled him first, but either way, I'm using a completely different team in this battle against him. So to just kind of talk a little bit about some of the guys I'm bringing, the first one is actually the most interesting. I'm using a banded Raikou because why not give that a shot? I figured it would just be fun to try because it does get extreme speed if you use the event Raikou, so I'm like banded extreme speed. That's got to be cool. It also has Crunch and Wild Charge and Volt Switch. Also with this team I'm bringing a Registeel, which is just defensive set of Stealth Rocks, also has Thunder Wave, a Calm Mind Virizion, also a defensive Slowbro and a defensive Dusclops, and also a Scarfed Flygon, because most Flygons are Scarfed. I normally run an Expert Belted one, but for purposes of this team, I changed up the item to make it Choice Scarf, just so that I can have a little bit more speed. But with that, let's jump into the battle right now and get started with our leads. So to start things off, I lead off with my Raikou as my opponent led off with his Aerodactyl. Now, expecting him to go for Stealth Rock first turn, even though Aerodactyl does outspeed and also have a super effective Earthquake usually, I do feel safe here just freely going for Volt Switch, and it turns out that that prediction works out really well for me because I don't take any damage as my opponent gets up the entry hazard and do a huge chunk of damage with Volt Switch as I switch out into my Dusclops. Now the reason that doesn't kill obviously is because I am a banded Raikou as opposed to having any special attack investment. Also, he probably had a Focus Sash anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered, it wouldn't have killed. But I switch out to my Dusclops, try to go for a Will-O-Wisp, maybe expecting him to switch, but he taunts me so I can't do that, and then I have to go out, and I just have to kill it right out with a Nightshade. Now being taunted, I can't really do any damage to this Cofagrigus, so I decide to switch out into my Slowbro, even though both the Pokemon that I just had in and the one I switched out into are weak to Shadow Ball, and the reason for this is just because I wanted to get off a Toxic on this thing. And I also have the Regenerator ability, so if he did go for Shadow Ball, I could have at least switched out to regenerate a lot of the health I lost from the Shadow Ball. I was pretty confident it wouldn't kill, but I do lose my leftovers because of knockoff, and I do get burned on my Slowbro, but that honestly isn't that big of a deal because of Regenerator. But either way, we both actually decide to switch out that turn, me going out into my Registeel knowing that Cofagrigus can't really do anything to that, and then my opponent going out into Scrafty trying to maybe set up because of me being burned and him having a super effective Crunch. But either way, he actually predicts my switch back out into Slowbro right now, going out into his Roserade, and now me having to switch back out into my Registeel unfortunately means that my Registeel is going to get put to sleep because of the Sleep Powder. However, of all the Pokemon on my team, I decided that Registeel was probably the least useful, so this one being asleep isn't that big of a deal. But now me predicting my opponent to go back out into Scrafty to set up, I decided to go out into my Virizion. He instead goes out into his Sharpedo, which is amazing for me because my type matches up super effectively against both of his types. Now, me expecting him to just switch out because of this, I decided to go for a Calm Mind expecting him to switch. He just stays in going for Protect, showing me that this is probably a special variant because physical Sharpedos cannot touch Virizion. So he does go for Ice Beam, but because of Virizion's natural special defense and also the +1 from Calm Mind, able to live that really easily and just KO it on the following turn with a Giga Drain, getting up back most of the damage that I took from the Ice Beam, which is really good for me. Now, not really sure if he's going to go for a Bolt Strike or a V-Create with this Victini. Decided to go out into my Dusclops. He decides to go for Bolt Strike, but unfortunately for me, even though I do make the prediction correctly, expecting him to not go for a stab move, he does get a crit, which means he's actually able to 2-hit KO my Dusclops, which really stinks. But I decided to go out into my Raikou right now. I figured I kind of wanted to just show it off at this point, so I decided to, rather than go for Volt Switch, go for a Wild Charge just to see how much damage it would do to this Victini, knowing I would outspeed or he wouldn't be able to do a lot of damage to me with Volt Strike. Unfortunately, he does go out into his physical wall, which kind of stinks for me. Now, I do have a Crunch on this Raikou, but I did not expect this switch to come in, so me going for that really would have just been a really huge prediction that could have not been even remotely seen at that point in time. But I decided to go out into my Registeel now against this Cofagrigus, realizing that it's probably a pretty good matchup for me, and maybe I could try and wake up if he stays in. He does knock off my leftovers as well, but I do have to stay in now because this thing, or Scrafty comes in, and I just need to wake up and Thunder Wave this thing. And this is the point in the battle where if I did not wake up on the following turn, I would have lost it right there, because once Scrafty sets up, it is pretty much impossible to take down. Luckily though, he tries to Dragon Dance twice, which he would have needed to outspeed my Flygon. But either way, on the turn that he Dragon Dances for a second time, I actually go for the Thunder Wave, which is really great for me. Turns out it's not a Shed Skin variant, and it doesn't have Lumberry, it actually has a Life Orb. And he actually predicts a switch out into my Silver right here, going for the Crunch. And since I stayed in, I expected him to go for a Fighting move on this turn. He actually makes a really good play in going for Crunch twice, expecting me to switch out on the second turn, meaning that I lose my Slowbro. But now that this thing is paralyzed, I can safely bring in a counter, which is my Virizion. The really scary thing is here, I have to rely on Focus Blast hitting. Luckily it does, which is really good because I'm able to take out the Scrafty. It's super effective, so even though Scrafty does have some natural bulk, Virizion is going to be able to take it out, and it's also Life Orb, so that was going to do enough damage to deal with the Scrafty. And the hugest threat on my opponent's team is now pretty much gone. But he brings on his Roserade now, and me not wanting to take a Sludge Bomb, decide to go out into my Registeel. He decides to just put me to sleep again. Not that big of a deal, because Registeel, actually, I've basically left it in to die a few times in battle, but it's still alive, so that's really cool. But either way, now he decides to go out into his Victini as I'm asleep, and rather than switch, I decide to just stay in, take the V-Create. It's not that big of a deal, but because he does go for V-Create, that means his speed is now lowered, which is really good, because that means that on the following turn when I bring in my Flygon, if it is a Scarf Victini, I'm going to outspeed regardless, no matter what. It isn't gonna be a speed tie anymore, so I'm able to actually bring in my Flygon and just go for Earthquake, which is really good. He brings in his Cofagrigus to take it, but because of Stealth Rock and the entry hazards and poison damage, I'm actually able to 2-hit KO this guy, which is really good for me because Cofagrigus has been a pain for the entirety of the battle, and I'm able to actually KO a physical wall that would be preventing my Flygon from doing anything. But being only a couple Pokemon left now, I decide to stay in, maybe win a speed tie, go for Earthquake. Unfortunately though, my opponent goes for Zen Headbutt, wins both speed ties, and is able to actually KO my Flygon because he flinches me on the first turn, which is when I started freaking out a little bit. But either way, I'm able to bring in my Raikou now. Since he went for Zen Headbutt instead of V-Create, I'm able to actually live this with a pretty good amount of health and KO it with a Crunch on the following turn, which is really good because I'm able to get rid of this Victini now. I really just wanted to show off Banded Raikou this battle. But either way, now knowing I'll outspeed Roserade, I just stay in, go for another Crunch, which does a really good amount of damage to this Roserade. Roserade is more especially defensive, so counter to Raikou's special attacks is now not really so with the Banded set, which is kind of cool. But having my Virizion able to outspeed this Roserade, I'm able to just KO it with a Hidden Power, Ice or Fire. I'm not sure which one I have on this Virizion, but give me the victory in the battle, which is really good. So it was a really, really close 1-0 victory, but there were a few moments in that battle where I felt like I could have just lost it. If I missed that Focus Blast with Virizion against the Scrafty, I would have lost the battle right there. I also freaked out, as I said, when Victini flinched me with Zen Headbutt and took out my Flygon. That was scary, but it made it a lot more interesting at the end of the battle, which was kind of cool. But that was pretty much it for this battle, everyone, so I kind of hope you enjoyed this little double header I had against this guy. He's a really cool guy, as I've said in my previous video. Really awesome team, and I've had a lot of fun battling him with both the teams that I've used and have, enjoyed narrating them as well. So I hope you guys have as well. But that is it for this video, everyone. So as always, take care, goodbye, and I will see you all next time.